Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There's never been a more important time in Australian modern-day history to continue this government's commitment to reforming the vocational education and training sector. I've spoken often in this place and at length about the importance of the vet sector. But as we navigate these choppy COVID-19 waters, we must maintain our focus and our commitment to vet, and that is precisely what this bill will do. The Morrison government understands well the importance of the vet sector. The political leadership exhibited by both the senior responsible minister, Senator Cash, and the assistant minister, the member for Swan, who was once himself an electrician, or what is colloquially known as a sparky. The member for Swan completed his own apprenticeship all those many years ago, when one wonders whether there was in fact electricity around. But I digress, Mr Speaker. The member for Swan is committed to vet, as is Senator Cash, as are all members and senators who sit on the government benches. The member for Swan has walked the talk. He is the real deal when it comes to passion for the vet sector. Just like the Minister for Water, Resources and Northern Australia, he too is an electrician, having completed an apprenticeship and then going on to complete a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering. So too the member for Nichols and the Minister for Aged Care, Youth and Sport, Senator Colbeck. They both completed carpentry apprenticeships, as did I, Mr Deputy Speaker. The ranks of government members on both the front and back benches are replete with ex-blue-collar workers, or what many refer to today as tradies. But, Mr Speaker, once a tradie, always a tradie. I'm still a registered builder, a proud builder, who likes nothing more than pulling the nail bag on and doing a few jobs around the house and even helping out on community projects when time permits. That's not an invitation to have me around to your place, Mr Deputy Speaker. My point, Mr Deputy Speaker, is this. Members and senators on the government benches understand the importance of the vet sector, not from an academic or an economic textbook or from some ideological basis, but from a real-world lived experience, from getting dirt under one's fingernails, from working all day in the hot sun and the cold wind and rain and then going home and doing the books to pay your suppliers, your employees and your subbies. Now, whilst I want to acknowledge that this bill will pass with the support of those opposite, and I thank them for that, it's that lived experience that those opposite will never understand, because they haven't walked a mile in the shoes of someone who is vet sector trained. For all the talk of those opposite of purporting to stand up for the workers, how many of those opposite have actually done an apprenticeship, a traineeship, or worked as tradies? Silence. Gone are the days of old when the ALP's ranks were replete with blue-collar workers. Now it seems Labor will do almost anything to bury what was once its heartland, its support base. Inconceivably, Labor in the lead-up to the last election and still believes that its miners should not be working in those jobs anymore. It seeks to close down coal mines and prevent new coal mines from opening. In fact, it seems to want to prevent any type of mine from opening up. Australian workers know that Labor's $380 billion worth of additional taxes it took to the last election and still remain Labor policy today would have and will kill the Australian economy if ever they get a chance to form government again. Australian workers, Mr Deputy Speaker, are not mugs. They understand Labor's position in the lead-up to last year's election. When I stood on pre-poll for 3 weeks and on election day, I saw the wearers of high-vis, tradies, time after time, make a beeline to me as the LNP candidate because they knew that we had worker-friendly policies, unlike those opposite. Those opposite seem incapable of understanding that it is a tried and proven political maxim that you never forget your base. Not only have Labor forgotten their base, they have totally and utterly abandoned it. When a political party like the ALP has been taken over by political apparatchiks and professional trade unionists who do not understand the values of those it purports to represent, then that voter base will simply vote with their feet. And as we've seen, that is just what many blue-collar workers, what many tradies are doing. Why? Because the Labor Party has abandoned them in favour of the cultural inner-city elites. And as you know, what the really sad thing, Mr Deputy Speaker, they just don't get it. Labor just don't get it. They don't understand. They blame everyone else but themselves and their anti-business, anti-individual, reckless green ideological groupthink policies. One wonders why organisations like the CFMMEU continue to support the ALP. It can't be about values or political beliefs, unless, of course, the CFMMEU have themselves sold out their own members. Unions like the CFMMEU continue to donate millions of dollars to the ALP each and every year. Perhaps that's why the ALP cannot break its umbilical cord with the CFMMEU. They both need each other, but it's not about the workers, it's not about apprentices or trainees, it's about money, power and greed. The more money a union donates to the ALP, the more power it has over the ALP. Do you recall when the Leader of the Opposition said that he would drive the Secretary of the Victorian branch of the CFMMEU, John Setka, from his position? Guess what? 12 months later, John Setka is still the Secretary of the Victorian branch of the CFMMEU. But, Mr Speaker, I want to return to the significance of this bill to the vet sector. And I want to speak to the apprentices and trainees out there who may be listening on their way home from building sites. They may be in factories or workplaces around the country. Maybe they're still on building sites. It's getting a bit late in the day. I want you to know, apprentices and trainees, I want you to know that this Liberal national government has your back. We have your back because we know and understand the importance of apprenticeships and traineeships, because many government members were once just like you. We've walked in your shoes. We've experienced what you are experiencing today. We understand that you may be nervous about your job. We understand that you may be concerned what will happen to your future. How will you finish your apprenticeship or traineeship in these difficult times? I remember, Mr Deputy Speaker, distinctly asking myself these questions when, during my own carpentry apprenticeship, when we endured Paul Keating's recession we had to have. I distinctly recall sitting around at Smoko on a building site, listening to my boss telling us that things were about to get very tough and that work would likely dry up for many. Thankfully, it didn't for us, and I was able to complete my apprenticeship. But I can hear my boss saying, like it was yesterday, that during a recession, cash would be king. Peter Marnie, you were right then, and you're still right now. This Liberal national government understands the importance of looking after apprentices and trainees. That's why the government, very early on in its COVID response, offered to pay 50% of the wages of apprentices and trainees, an arrangement which has resulted in many employers keeping their apprentices and trainees, because we know that when this is over, it's so important to the future of this country that that relationship is maintained. This 50% wage subsidy runs up to the 30th of September. As at 30 April, claims for 15,562 apprentices and trainees have been finalised to assist 9,518 employers, resulting in a total of $72.7 million in payments. This program is part of the federal government's $1.3 billion Supporting Apprentices and Trainees initiative, and it is saving jobs. I do agree with the member for Cooper and some of those opposite that there are simply not enough apprentices and trainees to meet the usual demand of the Australian industry. Now, that demand may have been somewhat ameliorated during this health and financial crisis we are in, but when the economy fires again, and it will, we are going to need skilled tradespeople. And you can't have skilled tradespeople without apprentices and trainees. You can't have them if they are not formally trained in the vet sector. You can't just add water to a labourer and get a tradesperson. You need that formal education through the vet sector to get someone to that level. Similarly, for these same reasons, the government introduced JobKeeper program, which sees eligible employers receive $1,500 a fortnight for eligible employees to maintain that relationship during this crisis. That's at an estimated cost of $70 billion. It's the largest government response to an economic crisis in our history, and it is just part of the government's approach to maintaining our economy at a cost of some $180 billion. Today we heard the Prime Minister announce these infrastructure program that will be rolled out. We will need more trained trainees and apprentices for the work that is about to be rolled out. Similarly, the government recently announced its home builder package. I know from my own electorate that we've seen in one housing estate in my electorate sell out, on the Sunshine Coast I should say, sell out in one day. And the developers were saying and attributing the fact that they sold out the entire estate in one day to the home builder program. So I want to say to mums and dads out there who may be talking to their kids about a future in as a tradie, not every kid should go to university. And I hear that, in fact, the member for Cowan said exactly the same thing just last week, and on that I agree with her. Not every kid should go to university. Mums and dads out there, your kids can get an absolutely fantastic profession, career, by taking an apprenticeship or a traineeship, training through the vet sector, and maybe starting your own business. But the doors will open for your children if you encourage them to take on an apprenticeship or a traineeship, and great things will happen for them, as they did for me and apprentices and trainees across the country. Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill includes a number of provisions to revise the governance structure of ASQA to align with best practice regulation, including it provides for the Governor-General to appoint a statutory office holder known as the Chief Executive Officer of ASQA as the National Vet Regulator on a full-time basis. This replaces the current arrangement of a Chief Commissioner and two other commissioners comprising the National Vet Regulator. It provides that the CEO is the head of the statutory agency for the purposes of the Public Service Act and the accountable authority of the listed entity known as ASQA for the purposes of the Finance Law. It provides that a person who is or has been at any time in the 2 years before an appointment is made an executive officer of a registered training organisation is not eligible for appointment as the National Vet Regulator. It also provides for the engagement of staff and consultants to support the National Vet Regulator. It provides that the Minister may give directions to the National Vet Regulator in relation to the performance of the regulator's functions or powers. It establishes an advisory council to provide advice to the National Vet Regulator in relation to the regulator's functions. The advice will be in relation to the registration of an individual registered training organisation or the accreditation of a particular course as a vet accredited course. It provides the Advisory Council is to consist of a chair and up to 9 other members with expertise in regulation, communications, delivering training, operating or managing a training provider. It provides that the Advisory Council may provide advice to the National Vet Regulator on its own initiative or at the request of the Minister or of the regulator. The regulator must have regard to any advice provided by the Advisory Council. It establishes arrangements relating to the National Vet Regulator and Advisory Council members' appointment, including remuneration, allowances, leave, resignation and termination. It provides that the Minister may give written directions to the Advisory Council about the performance of its functions and sets out transitional provisions to preserve decisions and actions taken by previous commissioners. Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to wrap up by once again encouraging young people to go out, get an apprenticeship, go onto building sites, go and see businesses, knock on every door. That next knock could be something that changes your life and sets you up for life.